What I plan to talk about this evening is kind of a summary of the various ways I get into a lot of conversations with frustrated homeowners that are trying to do the right thing. They're trying to lower their impact on the environment, and they really don't know how, or they've tried something and it hasn't worked. And so I was thinking about kind of the 3 or 4 questions that I often get asked and the way that I answer them. And so we'll get into that as soon as I blast past a few intro slides. So my professional background is in financial services, which doesn't have a lot to do with demolition, but has everything to do with asset management and how to kind of make prudent use of one's own resources, whether they are financial or otherwise. And so I was pretty aghast when I did a renovation on my own house, and you know, just kind of, it was seemingly normal to throw everything away. And I kind of challenged the contractor, saying, you know, there should be someone who needs this stuff. I mean, granted, it's not my cup of tea, but isn't there anything we can do? And he said, well, of course there is, but I'm not your volunteer, and my day rate is $700. Do with it what you will, right? And I'm like, okay, that makes a certain amount of sense. But, you know, that's not the answer I wanted, obviously. So, I was raised thinking that if something frustrates you enough, do something about it. And at the time, I had been unceremoniously dismissed when the internet bubble burst, and I had a lot of time on my hands. So I thought, you know, this might be a good time to rethink my path and do something that is a little bit more meaningful to me. And so, as you can see, through the years, Green Goat was launched in 2001. I tried a lot of different things. I started out wanting to draft recycling plans for large building renovations, and did a little energy work. And in 2004, I got a call from a frustrated homeowner tearing down a house in Newton. And she said, you know, I kind of can't stand it. You know, the thought of this, it just makes me want to cry, and you've just got to help me. And I said, well, we really don't do residential work. And she's like, please, you know, I'll pay you. And I'm like, well, good point. I'm listening. And we helped her, and that led to kind of an examination of residential opportunities, and you know, 6 years later, that's what we do. And now commercial work is a small slice of the pie for us, and we basically come in like an army of ants before a house goes down or gets gutted or the kitchen gets gutted or what have you, and basically just get everything out of there that we possibly can. Now, it's a small asterisk, but when there's a general contractor involved and it's a smaller renovation, his crew or her crew will do the work. They'll just kind of get things out and put them to one side rather than throwing them in the dumpster, and we pick them up. But in the case of a whole house goes down, it's kind of up to me to schedule various crews to come in and get the things out. The name, we're named Green Goat because goats eat everything. At least they do in the cartoons, and I'm a big believer in cartoons, so there you have it. But we do take it all, including, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, landscaping, which is very meaningful. And one of the reasons I'm so excited to be here this evening is that when a house is being torn down, the GC doesn't really understand all the planning and fertilizer and water and tears and work and all of it that goes into the foundational plantings and beyond. And some of them actually are worth quite a lot of money, but it's just not even on the radar, unless a landscape architect is involved. And so I love giving plants away, but we'll get back to that. These are my bragging rights. I'm half Swedish, half German, fully neurotic. So I love a good spreadsheet. And I have counted every little toothpick that I have ever saved and assigned that a weight. We also calculate embodied energy. So what that means is how much energy does it take to cut down the tree, bring it to the mill it into lumber, make that into a door, and get that to a retail distribution area. And that's the concept of life cycle accounting. And the kind of the lesson here to walk away with is that my background was in asset management, and you can kind of think of those terms a couple of different ways. How I think of them for Green Goat is that we can slap a lot of photovoltaic panels on roofs, we can conserve water, those are all good ideas. But we also shouldn't remake a door when we're throwing perfectly good doors away. So there has to be an easier way so that the contractor doesn't have to spend his or her time figuring out where to put these drawers. And Green Goat is basically an outsourcing solution. So we have a wait list of people who want floors and doors and all of that stuff, and we basically just set up shop. And if you were going to knock down your home tomorrow, I would turn it into a hardware store and I would just camp out there for a month. And even if I had to give things away, they would find a home. So we translate those, all the tonnages into actual material value, energy, as I said, and also kind of carbon footprint type data. And then we do graphs. Aren't graphs fun? Yeah, there's kind of nothing more to say, but other than just bragging that I slice and dice these numbers in my sleep. But the real power behind the story is like where things go, the people that get them from point A to point B, and the things we learn along the way. Now, the problem with applying some of these lessons to the commercial realm is that we have a very high-touch approach. So I can tell you a gazillion very boring stories. Well, maybe not so boring, but where did the bathtubs go? What about that hideous plum bathtub from the 80s that somebody just flipped out over when they came into our warehouse? They're like, "Oh, you have plum!" And I'm like, "I have plum. I've been waiting for you. I have a matching toilet and a pedestal sink, and you can have the entire collection, if you will." And she was very, very happy.
So funny.
So here we kind of change gears a little bit here in terms of the three big lessons that I've learned along the way that I thought might resonate with you guys. Is that a lot of times when you're greening a construction project, you need to, I think, focus first on what do you care about. Not what has Amy Bauman told you to care about, but what do you really care about. And one of the things that triggers a reaction in me is whenever I get really frustrated with something, I pay attention to that. And I note that feeling, and I kind of just bookmark it and come back to it later. And I may not know exactly what to do about it right then, but if I simply kind of let it grow like any seed will, sometimes ideas come along. And so this one mattered to me. I got a call from someone in a historic society in Boston that said, "Amy, there is a big pile of slate shingles in the back of Morton Street Police Station, and they aren't doing anything about it. Can you imagine? And I said, wow, well, that sounds really bad. So I went over, and I mean, Morton Street, the police station is going to be turned into, I think, affordable housing, and it's right on the train line. It's a great location, but it's very busy, and it's kind of a rock and roll area, I will say. And so I went to see, you know, and there were like, in and amongst this pile were also, you know, kind of bottles of Thunderbird and, you know, like old tennis shoes and a lot of stuff. And I'm like, I don't know what I can do with this, but I'm willing to try. So obstacle number one, quite frankly, was the city of Boston. I called them and said, apparently you have this slate shingle pile out in back of Morton Street Police Station, which is going to be knocked down. What are you doing with it? And they're like, what do you mean, what are we doing with it? I mean, 3 guesses. And I said, well, let me put it another way. I would like to do something with it. And they said, well, we would have to put a bid spec out there for public, and then you would need to bid on that job. And what do you want to do now? I'm like, oh, let's do it. Hey, you've got my undivided attention. I am in. And so we put the spec together and put it out there, and they said, okay, time to bid. What do you bid? I'm like, $1. And they're like, you win. I'm like, good way. This was like 3 weeks have gone by, and I'm like, oh, this is great. Well, right now they need insurance and all this other stuff, and it was kind of a carousel of bureaucracy. But at the end of the day, and here is my point, I had so much fun. We got volunteers. People got really creative about how to use these shingles. There were people who put them on their ends and created garden paths out of them. This one woman actually shingled a chain link fence with them because they have the 2 nail holes. So she just took gauge, you know, certain gauge wire and literally like covered the chain link fence. It looked great. And I'm always very impressed with what I learn from you. And a lot of it was an appropriate place to bring kids and teach them about something that was good for the planet, and actually maybe taught the city a little something as well, which is a nice side benefit. So that's it. I mean, look for your opportunity. If you're frustrated by something, just keep thinking about it, and an idea will come. And this is just kind of maybe another way to segue from that into kind of some of the more gardening aspects. So far, we have rerouted 17 tons of plants. Now, you know, I guess one could say, you know, how much of that is dirt? I'm not sure. But a lot of plants. And I give them away. So if you're interested, now is a great time to be thinking about transplanting certain species, and Green Goat has a few projects in the pipeline. So if you want to come dig, sometimes it's Pachysandra, sometimes it's a Japanese holly. I can't promise something super backflip exotic, but hey, if you need a privacy hedge, I'm your gal. And yeah, exactly. The other thing that I like about saving plant life is that it actually does absorb. It takes in CO2 from the atmosphere, and I hear that it's kind of a problem. I don't know. But again, kind of back to all the work that goes into a garden. I don't know, do you guys trade plants ever? Do you have programs like that? It's the same thing. So I often work with local garden clubs in the town where we have projects and just kind of say, you know, like, bring your trowels and, or bobcats, because sometimes, you know, those rhododendrons have gotten a good head start and they're a bit unwieldy. Any questions so far? Come on, there's got to be a question out there. Who's courageous? Oh.
Where do you keep all this plant stuff? Where are you located?
Great question. I do not warehouse any of it because that would cut into the success rate for the plant itself. So we will get the word out on Craigslist and just say, you know, like free plants, and I don't post the address because this is, you know, a client's house, but I just coordinate with people and really kind of focus on it in early spring or late fall. It's tricky in the middle of summer. Sometimes there are opportunities. I mean, I guess it's just better living through a lot of water. And so I just tell people, like, put it right in water and just really baby it. But we try, that's part of it. We try not to warehouse anything. So if I'm taking apart a house, I really try to find someone who can use the sink, the refrigerator, whatever it is, right then and just take it away, because it just adds overhead for me to store it all. Yes?
So if someone was doing the kitchen, how long do they have to contact you about the demolition?
Well, you mean to donate or to receive?
To donate.
Probably a good 2 or 3 weeks minimum ahead of time.
So if I were taking down my house,
Yeah.
do I pay you to come and take and to sort all of these things out? How does that work?
Well, we do ask a fee for our services, and then on top of that, we would probably sell certain items. It gets a little tricky because there are a lot of things that we end up giving away, like carpet and flooring, and our KFC secret recipe is that we try to get the receiving crew to actually do the deinstallation. So that is a lot of coordination, obviously, but they care more about the outcome than we ever could. So I find that it works much better.
So I know someone in Norfolk who is going to be tearing down her old house.
Yeah.
And so she would contact you and you would come and give an evaluation of her home?
Exactly.
Oh, okay, good.
Exactly.
Good, thank you.
Oh, and look, I have a business card.
Thank you.
Weird how that happens.
Habitat for Humanity at all?
Yes, as a matter of fact, well, we don't work with them. I think they do things a little bit differently than we do, but the idea is exactly the same. And so they have their building affordable housing side, and then they have restores that help fund that.
They have storage facilities for.
Exactly. And so if you have small things, now I don't kind of offer pickup for, like, you know, a toilet, a fridge. That would be a perfect thing for Habitat for Humanity because they just keep their truck whizzing around town picking up little things. Or big things. You know, obviously if you've gutted a kitchen, they'd be happy to get that too. We tend to do whole houses. So, yep.
Boston Builders, I think is that what they're called, they will come and pick up for a small fee.
Yeah.
And clean out your farm.
It's particularly in New England where there are a lot of historic architectural artifacts or, you know, I think this is really running in our blood. Like, this is the way it's kind of always worked here, and this is like, you know, Yankee frugality at its best. And so I think in other parts of the country, it's maybe not even as popular, but Boston has a great long-standing tradition of salvage. Yes?
Amy, there's one of the, well, I'll just call it national hardware stores that's running an ad where they show the couple with sledgehammers going in and demolishing.
I've seen that ad.
Sinks and everything.
Yes.
I shudder every time I see it, and
I
I promise
know.
myself I'm going to sit down and write a letter to that national
I
park company.
know.
But is that the kind of thing that someone could have called you, assuming that those were in good condition,
Right.
that you could have come in and made arrangements for those to be cabinets and stuff?
Yes. We'll run a kinder, gentler ad for Green Goat. Like, it's not as much, you don't get your yayas out. Well, you do, actually, just in a different way, but absolutely. So we advocate for opening the door to the project a few weeks earlier. While the contractor is getting a demo permitting, we can be planning for the orderly egress of cabinets and toilets and whatnot. And so it doesn't have to slow the project down, which is kind of first and foremost in every contractor's mind. Like, it sounds nice, but you know, I got a schedule to keep, so I can't be hanging out, you know, singing Kumbaya as you gingerly pluck the, you know, sconce from the wall. So we don't do that. Keep it moving.
So do you advertise in Craigslist and that's it for buying the stuff?
No, that's kind of the means of last resort. So I actually have a list of contractors who, for example, maintain apartment buildings. And so there are apartment buildings and, well, not dorms as much, but there are certain types of projects and structures that get refreshed a lot, and they would want to keep the cost down. So, so I have a list of contractors who do that, and so they're my two. The from is you guys, the to is them. And then if something doesn't move right away, you know, we then, you know, talk to friends and family and the architects that we work with. It depends on what it is. But Craigslist is a good resource. I don't think it should be, you know, the cornerstone of any professional distribution strategy. But
What about plants? That's more Craigslist?
well, again, I know a lot of landscape architects and nurseries. Now, nurseries, there's an education process. So they want to have everything super pretty. And they're not into kind of the three-sided rhododendron that's been crammed up against the house. But they might be if it was free and if it went to a homeowner who was going to put it right up against a house, you know. And so I'm trying to talk to nurseries about maybe giving me a corner to work with. They have other issues, like if they transplant something and it dies, you know, that's overhead for them. So it's hard. That's why giving it away or giving it to a landscape architect or a landscaper. Landscapers adopt a lot, and they'll just prune it back. They'll berm it in and bring it back and sell it, you know? And I love that someone's making a living off of stuff I give away. Why not? But I also like just giving it to homeowners. That's cool. And then even though I do not like shipping things, I think charity really does begin at home, and we can't just ship everything out of the region and to other parts of the world. I have worked with some international projects, such as the Haiti reconstruction efforts. Believe it or not, it's not any longer in the news, but they're still struggling, and they will be for a long time. I got to know a project in Nairobi that needed doors and very, very basic building materials for some clinics they were building, and I was very happy to help. And you know, one big house is probably, you know, like 30, 40 doors, if it's big enough. Right, so I mean, we can easily reroute to other parts of the world. We just generally choose not to. It has to be a special project, but we do that every once in a while. But back to local living. So what is local living? I get a lot of questions about, you know, I would love to buy you know, wallpaper, upholstery, or something from a local vendor. But A, if they don't make what I want, guess what? I'm just going to go to the upholstery shop and maybe not ask questions. Again, I guess I would say don't make yourself crazy. But if there is a local artist or a local shop that is doing work that you can use, try. You know, like get away from the big box, the chain stores, and really try to support local hardware stores, local contractors, obviously, as much as you can, because we want to keep that business here in Massachusetts, obviously, and keep those dollars circulating locally. So as much as you can, you know, we recommend that. And then, you know, kind of beyond just green building, the same goes for local restaurants. Asking them where they get their produce. You know, do they take advantage of some of the farms we have here in Massachusetts? I mean, I don't know that we're known for a lot of farms, but the ones that we have really need us. And so consider getting a local CSA share. I don't know, has anyone done that? Well, you guys probably grow your own vegetables. What am I saying? Well, not everyone, but it's a great idea, and it's a good way to kind of remind yourself who else is out there, and maybe like right down the road from you that is that's making a living off the land. So we're into that. I don't know if anybody out there has questions about you know, green building. We hear a lot about solar power and wind power and a little hydro here and there. I guess I would say first, if you are contemplating renewable energy, incorporating energy conservation into your house, of course, I'm all for it. Really interview the contractor and make sure that it's more than just marketing, because some of the mechanical systems have a lot of interdependencies, and you want to make sure that the entire team is on board with kind of knitting in energy conservation and water conservation in a way that makes sense for your house. The low-hanging fruit is always adding insulation and air sealing. Those are the two things that have the quickest payback and the lowest interdependency of anything you can do. Of course, waste management is kind of a kingdom unto itself. So I really have very little impact on the rest of the project, but I'm just kind of commenting a little bit on some of the topics in the rest of green building. Has anybody tried anything with your own house and had it either fail beautifully or work out in the end? Yeah.
I was looking for a 4x4 cedar post. Really, you know, I needed something that was naturally preservative without any chemicals. Because I was building a tree house, and I just needed one board at the bottom of it.
Right.
And no one would sell me one. I could get pressure treated, or I could get these big like lamp posts and stuff. So I called the fence guy and I thought, well, he's got to have some somewhere. At least he'll tell me where to go.
Right.
And he said, oh, I just about never do cedar fences anymore. It's all plastic now. But I happen to be taking down the cedar fence right now, and half the boards are perfectly fine. Come on over and get your board for nothing. And I said, okay. So it was like 3 streets over too. So I drove over.
Wow, great.
And he had like 50 4x4s, just clean and stacked like they came off a pallet. And they were gray, and they wanted not gray ones. So that was the only thing that was wrong. So I took my one, and he goes, well, take a couple more if you want them. And I said, oh, it could be a bigger clubhouse. Yeah, okay. So then I got a couple more just for, I don't know what I'm going to do with them for the bigger treehouse. And then I got home, and I thought, why didn't I go get more of them? So I went back and got the whole truckload of them.
Yeah,
And I
nice.
built two, I have pictures of them, and I've shared them with some of the garden club. So I have 2 raised planters out of cedar.
Awesome.
That are 2 feet high and 8 feet long, almost 8 feet long. I cut off the ends, make them clean. And they'll outlast me, because cedar just lasts that long.
Cedar.
Do you have any wood left?
And
Yeah.
you check 115 right across from Joe's Barber Shop. They throw out stuff there.
Well, it's, yeah, I have a lot of great examples like that where the materials themselves can be the muse. So I kind of never know exactly what's going to be in the house, but you know, Green Goat has groupies that'll just, you know, tell me where you are, I'll come over, and people who just kind of like to keep themselves busy will say, wow, you know, that's great bluestone. And it's a little bit like being a chef and going to the fish market, and you just don't know what you're going to find. But if you are, you know, capable or at least, you know, confident, as my dad used to like to say, always sure, sometimes right. And, you know, we've supplied a lot of wood in particular, because that's kind of, it's not so expensive that people really think about throwing it away. But it's handy stuff. You know, you can build with it, I've heard. So, yeah, lots and lots of stories. And that's that's all I had to say, really. But I'm, of course, happy to answer questions. Go ahead.
What do you do with the really aesthetically valuable architectural elements like columns and medallions and things like that? Do you sell them on to somebody else who sells them?
Well, sometimes. I have a list of architects who specialize in historic structures. And a lot of times, I mean, I just kind of have to use my best judgment, and I certainly don't have a lot of academic background in the various eras of architecture, but I know a lot of architects. And so if something strikes me as important, I get in touch with an architect. There actually is a building that's slated to come down. It's part of McLean Hospital, and it was one of the, if anybody has heard of McLean, it's kind of a famous asylum. I'm sure we're not calling it that.
Psychiatric hospital.
Right. Psychiatric care center. And back at the turn of the century, you actually didn't have to be completely loony to go to a sanitarium. You could simply be feeling nervous, right? And it's just like, oh, time to go to the country. Wait, I don't know how to finish that sentence. Like, anyway, so a lot of the more well-established Boston families would build these elaborate buildings out at McLean for their, and like anyone from just slightly nervous to, oh my God, bonkers, would be there, and one of these buildings is coming down. So I took a look at the medallion, and I started doing some genealogical research on the family. And I tried to figure out who the direct descendants were of the man who had the building built for his son, who died tragically after a long undescribed illness. And so I got to the president of this family society, and I'm like, hey, are you aware that part of your history is on the chopping block here? And he's like, no. And I'm in this very tentative position, right? Because I don't want to get anybody so riled up that they're going to stop the project, because then I just kind of lost a friend in the contractor. But I want them to get riled up enough so that perhaps they would consider warehousing columns and medallions and copper cladding and all of it, and we would help them do this. And this is one of the kind of the rare opportunities I have to be a granting organization and actually come in with logistical help, not just a demolition company, but a mason and so on and so forth, so that we can really save, if you can't save the building, save the best parts of it. And so we're kind of partially into that, and I've done additional genealogical research because unfortunately I hit a dead end in terms of the heirs. But hey, over here we have Cabots. Excellent. I'm like, okay, another family society to talk to. So sometimes it's a function of how much time I have. You know, if I don't have any time, down it comes. But I was bored that day and decided to dig into the family that built the building. And yeah, anything that you care about is a fantastic odyssey sooner or later, and I care about that. Yeah.
Okay, so essentially, I'm a contractor.
Yeah.
And I got a job to do a kitchen, to get a kitchen.
Right.
So I'm going to take the counter, I'm going to take the dishwasher, I'm going to take the refrigerator, anything like that, the cabinets.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And I say, I should call Green Goat.
Right.
I call you and I say, I have this kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
If I take it out, you'll take it.
Correct.
For free.
No.
Okay.
That's
No.
not true.
No. Because, I mean, unless it's one heck of a kitchen. And I have seen kitchens that I picked up for free, and thank you. Most kitchens are not, oh my gosh, I can't believe that kitchen. And we had one 2 days ago, and it was a cherry kitchen, but it was from the 80s, a couple of cracked doors, a laminate counter. You know, so I worked it out with the homeowner. So the homeowner paid me a little bit. I sold it for a little bit, and I think I broke even. I don't know. Like a small kitchen, I'm probably not going to be interested in because I'm going to have to go back a few times, sadly, because the cabinets today, the half bath next week, and oh, we might have some furniture for you in a few weeks. Just hang on. So I'm like, okay, like that's okay. But then I have to do an appraisal and I have to do tax forms for them. And so there's like this kind of critical mass that just works from a business perspective. And a small kitchen and a half bath is a little tricky. An entire huge house in Wellesley Hills is kind of
Gold mine.
hopefully, but guess what? A lot of those were done with metal-clad single-pane windows. It looks great, but the marketability of single-pane windows these days is not good. So I, of course, would love it, but some of the materials, plus chiseling metal-clad windows out of a brick surround is not fun. So you'd be surprised, but yeah, you know, every project is a little bit different, but I think the point is it has to be big enough for me to kind of get, you know, take care of the overhead, the trucks, labor if I need labor, and I usually do, tax reporting and all of that. But that's the proposal phase. So the real answer to the question is I would hope to get a call from the architect, not the contractor. When the contractor is involved, you're about ready to do it. When the architect is involved, we've got a little time to plan, generally. Yeah.
So what's in it for my friend who's going to take this house, she's just going to tear the whole house down?
Yeah.
How do I sell
Aside-
your idea
Yeah.
to this woman who is, you know, she just wants to get rid of her house?
Right.
You know, I believe in sustainability. I
Right.
believe in
Aside
reuse.
from the
My brother
warm,
was
fuzzy
the director
feeling.
of Recycling services
Right.
at Harvard. It's ingrained in our lives. But how do you sell that to someone?
It's a
Maybe
big-
it's not as.
No, it's a tax write-off.
Okay, good, thank you.
Huge.
For that.
In some cases, huge. We just finished a 15,000 square foot house in Woods Hole. And, oh my God. I mean, it was sad to see it go, but that's a kind of another obstacle for conservation. A lot of times people with summer houses really don't maintain them very well. They kind of just don't think about it. You know, it's like, you know, I use it 3 months out of the year, maybe 4. I should not have to fix that roof. Well, yeah, you kind of do though, so think about it.
So, and
Yes?
how do you go about in your evaluating process? How do you go about, do you have a process that you use to determine what it would cost the homeowner or whoever is bringing you in?
I mean, like any business owner, I'm trying to evaluate the value that I bring to the process, about how much they can expect to get as a tax write-off and how much room there is, how much time I have to place the materials. Do I have enough time so that it's likely that the recipient is going to be picking that up rather than me taking it to our warehouse and hoping to sell it later? So all of these things go in. I mean, there's not a real straight line answer, but if I'm given a lot of time and the materials are exceptional, and the one thing that I don't want people to think is that they have to have exceptional materials. I place laminate cabinets. I mean, that's the great thing about Boston. Boston is a big city. Everybody needs what you got. And it doesn't have to be solid cherry by any means. But as a business vendor, of course I'm evaluating the resale potential and or how tricky it is to uninstall. If I'm going to need to uninstall it, how much time? Time is money. Do I need to get a specialty mason? Do I need to get a finished carpenter to get that out? And of course, the more special it is, the more care you need. And so that balance is what I evaluate when I'm doing a proposal.
So sometimes it might cost them more to have you come in and take it apart than it would be to have a contractor demolish it and pull it out?
Well, I don't know that if they don't have a lot, if it's really just a small kitchen and a half bath, I do have minimum engagement levels, so it's possible. I think by and large, so I've had well over 100 clients in the history of, since 2004. Very few was it not at worst cost neutral. But there are times when there's just no time. And the thing is that a general contractor has to line up all of those trades. And it's this carousel that needs a lot of coordination. And if we come in too late, we're going to blow up their schedule. That is more often what might kill the deal. There's just, we should have been talking to you 3 or 4 weeks ago. We'll catch you on the next one.
I just have one more question. Are you prepared to be bombarded at abaumann@greengoat.org from
Absolutely.
garden club members who want to know when are you taking down the hedges and when is there that
Yes.
rhododendron and where do we get the plants?
Well, I have a stack of business cards. We could also coordinate it through one person, perhaps you. Or the secretary, whoever has the sign-up list. I mean, what I could do is just send out an email reintroducing myself and say, keep in touch. If you have a wish list, let me know. So either way, I'm of course available.
I'm not wanting to cut anybody off. Do we have more questions? She's a wealth of information. Yes. Oh, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.